Hi everyone. My thesis is called Would You Rather Be at Home or in a Home? It is an exploration and comparison of older adult social connectedness between those who live alone in private homes and those who live in assisted living facilities. So I'll get more into the details of exactly what it's about later, but I'd like to start by telling you a bit about how I came to writing such a thesis. So to explain my fascination with older adults, I need to start by introducing these people. This is me when I was 15, alongside 4 other high school students and 6 Holocaust survivors. I joined this program called Witness Theater because I was looking for someone who would share with me their story of Holocaust survival, since my grandfather had died before I was old enough to hear his. So at this point in my life, I had a couple basic perceptions of old people. I knew that they could deteriorate so rapidly that their adult children would be responsible for making decisions related to their well-being, and that could be an extremely stressful process. I also had an image of old people as Holocaust survivors, having been exposed to many of them growing up. And those were the people who you sat quietly and listened to because they had a story to tell. But at Witness Theater, we did not sit quietly and listen to a one-sided story. We did not look at them and pity them for their age or their situation. For 6 months, 5 high school students, 6 Holocaust survivors, and our program directors met every week to exchange stories and share our lives with each other. There was this kind of sense of equality and mutuality between us, and it kind of felt like we were taking on the world together. So that's the experience that primed me for learning about the demographic phenomenon of our aging population a few years later in college. So now you know why I care about aging, but why should you? This is a visualization of how the age distribution of the US population has changed since 1950 and will continue to change up to 2060. So you can see that our population used to be shaped more like a pyramid with a strong foundation of younger people at the bottom to support the fewer numbers of older adults at the top. But it's been morphing and continues to morph into more of a rectangle with a pretty even distribution of the population across the ages. So as the baby boomer generation starts to enter older adulthood, those are these dark brown bars right here, we are facing a booming elderly population that we may not be very well equipped for. So what does that mean as those dark brown bars start to hit 75 and older, and what does that mean for those close to them? There are 3 major transitions that tend to occur with old age social networks. So a visualization of a typical social network might be thought of as a central individual with 3 concentric circles surrounding them. So that innermost circle are the people who are the closest to them, their very close friends and family. The middle circle are relationships that are less serious but still important and valuable. And then the outer circle would be the more casual relationships. So one transition that can occur with the old age social network is that the social network shrinks and intensifies. As the central individual ages, their network also ages, and it's likely that a few of them will pass away. So the central individual will channel more of their social energy into the fewer remaining network ties. Another change that can occur is that the need for social support increases, while simultaneously the availability of social support decreases. So the central individual will be facing greater limitations, such as not being able to drive or make meals for themselves, and they have fewer people to depend on to provide this support. And then finally, the other major transition that can occur is that the social network becomes more difficult to access. So as the central individual and their surrounding networks members are facing greater age-related limitations, especially the cessation of driving, decline of mobility, and moving out of their own homes, it becomes difficult for them to actually access and see and talk to those other people in their social network. So at this point, this circle, they start asking, what happens now? What can I do to support my mother or my sister or my friend? Should they stay at home and bring in help? Should they go somewhere like an assisted living facility? And the elderly individual starts wondering how to respond to these questions and sometimes even this pressure. So with that in mind, I ask, when the going gets tough, where do the elderly go? And we can conceptualize this comparison between assisted living facilities and living in a private home in a way that might be more relatable to those of us who have not quite reached old age. Freshman year, I picked the short straw in the housing lottery, and I was placed in Bursley Hall on North Campus. This was devastating news to me. Bursley Hall is one of 2 dorms on North Campus, which is 2.6 miles away from Central Campus. It is one of the only dorms where you need to take a bus to get to almost any class, social event, club meeting, or football game. It's known for being isolating, no freshman wants to be there, and many freshmen end up there. And those freshmen will go to great lengths to get out of it, including shelling out a lot of money to buy themselves out of their housing contract with the school and into a lease with one of the really nice high-rise apartments that are very close to campus. This was how I felt when I found out I was living on North Campus. So not that I never had much of an option, but let's just imagine I'd considered going for the apartment instead of living in Bursley. What would have been some of those trade-offs for me? For one, I would have been able to make my own food. I'd have the freedom to make what I wanted, but I would have to make it. I would have to find recipes, go grocery shopping, make sure I was getting a nutritious diet, actually cook the food, and clean up after myself. Whereas in Bursley, the food was there for me. I didn't always like it, but it was always there. The nutrition information was available, and all I had to do was put my dishes on a conveyor belt, and they'd be taken care of for me. And also, I ate almost every dinner with my friends, which was pretty nice. The really, really nice dorms are just steps away from the academic and social centers of campus. These are the places where you will run into friends on your way to meet other friends. You will see what's going on in the diag on your way to class. And you can sprint to class if you wake up late, which was never an option on North Campus. You could wait up to half an hour for the buses on the weekends. The buses were never where they said they were on the app. And the actual bus was an incubator of discomfort, stress, and the occasional friendship. So what did living on North Campus do for me? Despite its infamy, Bursley is also known as a social dorm within itself. Isolated in our own misery and sharing in the common challenges of North Campus, the residents come together. Living in Bursley and on North Campus actually gave me my friends for the rest of college, and we were very relieved to move into our own house on Central Campus together the following year. So, bringing this back to my thesis, the elderly face an opposite transition. For many people, old age brings on a level of dependence not experienced in many years. They begin to rely on others to provide meals, transportation, social interaction, and so on. And they face the question of where to go. Do they stay in their home and bring in care? Do they go somewhere like an assisted living facility? And what do those options mean for their social connectedness and their sense of self? For people who move to institutions, some of them didn't have the proper social networks in place to support them living in their home. And once in the institution, they can develop new social networks. Now, a stronger internal social network, meaning one inside the institution, can be indicative of a weaker external social network outside the institution, and these can both fluctuate with time. Additionally, there's a lot of social support available in the institution thanks to the accessibility of staff and the companionship of fellow residents who are dealing with a lot of similar challenges. For those who choose to age in place, meaning they stay at home and adapt to their challenges as they arise and change, bringing in care can alleviate a lot of the burden on those social network members who are supporting them. However, bringing in someone who's going to manage their life and their home can cause disruption to the person's sense of self, their lifestyle, and their relationship with their home. That disruption is mediated by the type of caregiving they receive. So for caregivers who operate based on a very contractual relationship, especially those who don't adapt very well to the individual receiving care, or who withhold emotional support, they can cause a disruption that's very difficult and sometimes even impossible to overcome. So this brings us back to the research questions that I was getting to at the beginning. My research questions are, how do older adults experience social connectedness and perceived isolation? And how does this experience vary between those living alone in private homes and older adults living in assisted living facilities? For this study, I'm defining social connectedness as the quantity and quality of social relations on the level of the individual, group, community, and larger social environment. Perceived isolation is defined as the degree of misalignment between their actual social connectedness and their desired social connectedness, and any challenges that are preventing them or making it difficult to achieve the desired social connectedness. I plan to conduct 20 qualitative interviews, 10 with respondents in assisted living, and 10 with respondents who are living in their own home or are home dwelling. I'm focusing on women who are 75 and older for this study, In a nutshell, women are more likely to be alone in old age than men are, and their social worlds operate kind of differently. So I believe it's easier to study women for this, and they will benefit more from this study. The study is focusing, the basic qualification is that they're alone, meaning that they don't have a partner, a roommate, or a spouse, someone who's going to provide that basic level of social interaction for them. They're really on their own when it comes to the social world and being social. You can see the specific criteria here for home dwelling respondents, but really the basic goal is to find people who are facing a similar level of dependence to those who are in assisted living facilities or would be. I'm conducting qualitative interviews, which means that the respondent and I have a semi-structured, in-depth conversation with the goal of developing a narrative about their life regarding their social connectedness and their perceived isolation. So we talk about their home and its meaning to them, their daily life inside and outside their home, any challenges that make it difficult to do daily activities. We talk about their social connectedness with individuals and groups and their community and their connection to the larger social environment, as well as how their actual connectedness compares to their desired connectedness. So far, I've completed 8 interviews, 5 with assisted living respondents and 3 with home dwelling respondents. I have 1 more interview scheduled with a home dwelling respondent this week. I have not gotten to the analysis phase yet, so I don't have any definitive themes to share, but I would like to share some of the interesting excerpts that I've come across in my interviews so far. Julia is 93. She lives in assisted living, and she said about living in assisted living, "This is sort of like being in a hotel. It's comfortable, but it's not my home." Martha is 80. She lives in her own home, and she said about the prospect of moving to assisted living, "And I know at that time I felt I would simply die. I would just shrivel up and die." Wendy is 84. She also lives in assisted living, and she said about her relationship with another respondent and friend who had been declining, "Since the dementia has progressed, it's not easy to converse with her. It's more listening to the stories she tells about when she was younger. You miss the give and take of an equal relationship." As I was wrapping up my interview with Wendy, she left me with some words that were a poignant reminder of the message ingrained by Witness Theater. She said, "The general slowing down of life means less need for social contact. It's okay not to have every moment filled with something to do. A lot of that has to do with the whole experience of time. Time is entirely different than it used to be. Time goes by so fast. I don't feel a need to fill time with doing things. Sometimes I have to just say, maybe another time, and that's okay." Wendy reminded me that I'm not coming to these people whose life experience quadruples mine to just sit quietly and listen to a one-sided story, to look at them and pity their situation, or to fix what I see as their problems. I'm coming to try to understand their experience and to share it with others.